Uganda is heading into another election season with noticeable patterns that threaten democracy and fundamental rights and erode the electorate's trust in systems. One of the patterns is the government's heavy-handed control over digital mediums, particularly through the telecom companies, and firm grip on freedom of expression, which has left a trail of muzzled voices, media self-censorship, internet shutdown, and platforms like Facebook closed. Internet was shut down again in the 2021 polls, and it's quite likely it will happen again in January 2026 after the polls. Facebook was shut down in 2021 for reportedly muzzling government voices while spreading opposition voices. Weaponization of state agencies and enactment of repressive legislation such as the Computer Misuse Act in place since 2011 but was amended in 2022, leading to harassment of critics or put a chokehold on political discourse, civic engagement, and free speech generally. In recent months, a string of arrests of users of the social media platform TikTok for ridiculing and spreading hate speech against, among others, President Museveni, his son and CDF General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, Speaker of Parliament Anita Among, specifically highlights the government's punitive stance to online dissident, majority of whom are ostensibly opposition supporters. In July 2024, the Entebbe Chief Magistrate Stella Maris Amabilisi sentenced Edward Awebwa, who ran the account Save Media Uganda, for insulting President Museveni, his wife, and his son. Legal scholars argue this is not an accident but a deliberate pattern in the repression toolkit comprising legislation and surveillance of digital platforms. While on paper, Uganda's constitution provides robust protection for free speech, in practice, laws like the Public Order Management Act and the Computer Misuse Act have been rolled out to dilute those freedoms.
For instance, when you look at the Computer Misuse Act, it's one of the avenues where people could express their feelings, emotions, here and there. But the government comes into play, introduces the Computer Misuse Act, and does the necessary amendments to ensure that if you are to speak, you must have a limit. To make matters worse, we even have the Public Order Management Act, the famous act, which mainly curtails the opposition parties more so from doing the campaigning. Whereas the Constitutional Court has come to interpret what the law is or what the law intended. But from what is in the book is different from what is on ground.
Of course, in the country we are in, that does not only happen in elections. Even before elections, after elections, they use that law. And it's a characteristic of semi-authoritarian governments. The popular view in most democratic societies, as we have seen the Constitutional Court in South Africa state, is that freedom of speech is ultimate. It is supreme to any other penalties or curtailments put in the law because it advances democratic principles. Now, if Uganda, if as a country, we are trying to move towards a democratic setting, a sane democracy, whereby freedoms of speech, etc., are guaranteed, then unreasonable curtailment such as one that arises out of the Computer Misuse Act should not be within the law.
Even when the courts struck down repressive clauses such as Section 25 of the Computer Misuse Act and Section 8 of the Public Order Management Act, little changed on the ground. Critics argue these judicial victories amount to a loud word of mouth with zero action.
The courts have done their obligations. They have gone ahead to interpret what this law is or what this law intended it to do about. So it goes back to the ones in the system on how to really balance what the law is saying and what should actually be on ground.
We are in a state where laws are applied selectively and when the people in power wish so. Whenever they are wishful is when laws are applied or applicable. To that extent, it becomes contemptuous to the judicial system. But we have a judicial system that is also not rising up in arms to protect its fundamental principles of independence.
The issue extends beyond legislation. Analysts point to a growing trend of manufactured security intelligence used to criminalize dissident and discredit political opponents during election cycles. In this environment, surveillance replaces dialogue, intimidation replaces accountability, and the Constitution, though beautifully written, becomes a little more ornamental.
The weaponization of laws, misinformation, and the suppression of dissent, both offline and online, reflect a worrying pattern that not only undermines democracy, but also erodes public trust in leadership. The question then remains, as Uganda inches closer to its next election cycle, can citizens trust that their freedom to speak, criticize, and campaign will be respected? David Iljo, NTV.